Imagine a world where the most cutting-edge AI technology isn't locked behind billion-dollar doors, but is open, accessible, and affordable. Welcome to the era of Deepseek, the game changer reshaping the AI industry. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and I didn't write that introduction to this show. Deepseek did. I'm with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and in this episode of Right Angle, I'd like to talk a little bit about something that just caused NVIDIA, the major success story on the stock market this year and in the past year, to lose $600 billion in value in a single day, and the overall stock market about $1 trillion in market cap. And
600 billion?
I think that was right. Yep.
Yeah, their market cap tanked. They had $3 trillion market cap.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jude.
Yeah.
But that's a big number.
So here's the deal. I'm gonna stipulate some things up front. There's a lot of unknown things right now. Basically, Deepseek is a new AI agent. You can download it on your phone. I did for this. And I literally asked it, I said, hey, I'm about to do a 15-minute, three-person panel discussion of general news interest. Can you write me an opening, a closing, and 2 questions? And then I asked for a follow-up question. And it wrote everything in about 12 seconds that all appears on this one screen. That's not new. ChatGPT is able to do that. Google's Gemini is able to do that. Perplexity can do that. There are a number of other AI tools that can do that. What is new is the claim that Deepseek is making that because they were restricted in their ability to access NVIDIA's latest GPUs, basically the engines that make it possible to do this massive computer processing, because they were so limited in accessing that because they're based in China, that they had to be a little bit scrappier. Whereas some of these big companies have spent $100 billion creating one of these tools, they said this project cost them $5.6 million.
And they did it in 2 months.
Yeah, so they did it in a couple of months, $5.6 million. It was done by a guy who was a hedge fund CEO, and it is, according to people who have analyzed it so far, as good as any of the other ones on the market right now, except that it cost a fraction of what they did. And the reason why NVIDIA's stock crashed is because people suddenly realized, wait a minute, if this is true, and if this, and I'll stipulate, it's possible that this company is lying and that they're not taking into account other expenses that preceded the rollout of this one, this product. But if it's true, that means that a lot of AI work can be done without having to have NVIDIA's latest, greatest, most expensive graphics card type GPUs that make this happen. And so their value plummeted, and a lot of other companies that have sunk hundreds of billions of dollars into this kind of an enterprise have been scooped by this little company that was essentially stuck having to do with little because they couldn't get what they really wanted. And so this is, Bill Whittle, this is what Deepseek wants me to ask you. You're panelist number 1, and Deepseek, it says this, Deepseek's open source model challenges the dominance of proprietary AI agents. Do you think this shift will democratize AI innovation, or could it lead to new challenges in maintaining quality and security?
It's probably the best question I've ever gotten on Right Angle in the
16 years of it.
I'm not hurt.
Something like that.
I'm not hurt.
That's the best question I've ever gotten from Scott Ott. What an astonishingly astute question. I'm practically godsmacked. Yes, I saw something very much like this in the field of nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion has been pursued by the general research has gone into something called a tokamak, which is an enormous thing the size of a movie theater practically, and all of these huge amounts of energy that are put in, and then it has to have a special kind of a shielding around it to stop it from being radioactive, despite the fact that fusion doesn't create blah 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 blah. Billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars for this enormous facility, And then along comes this company that basically built something that's the size of 2 refrigerators laid sideways end to end, that creates these toruses and then smashes them together, does the exact same thing. And you put it on, in the back of a regular pickup truck bed. And all of a sudden this multi-billion-dollar investment looks like just a dinosaur. Yes, it is possible for human ingenuity to make quantum leaps in technique. So it's not so much that the technology has advanced, so much that somebody has come up with a new theory, a new way to do things, and the person that came up the entity that came up with the theory wasn't the AI. Human ingenuity figured out a better way to do AI. And if they could basically take what NVIDIA was spending $600 billion on or whatever and do it for $5 million, well, $5 million is considerably less money than $600 billion. And so all of this investment that went into AI that everybody understands is a world-changing technology, everybody just suddenly said, well, my God, I can buy 3,000 companies like NVIDIA for the cost of what I've got invested in NVIDIA. Now, I'm a NVIDIA guy.
Now, let me clarify on this for a moment, because they're still using technology, some of it from NVIDIA. So, but who they're blowing out of the water here potentially is ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gemini, Perplexity, all of these other engines, all of whom are using NVIDIA GPUs.
So I'm an NVIDIA guy because I've been playing video games my whole life, and I remember when the first NVIDIA game chips came out, and I thought I've always been able to afford. It's the only real pastime I have, is playing mostly flight sims. So I've always been able to get the top NVIDIA card, and I remember when NVIDIA started playing with artificial intelligence around 7, 8, 10 years ago, and I thought, that makes sense. See, computer graphics require a tremendous amount of processing power. It's a very, very, very high processing load on a GPU.
Yeah, parallel though, not
exactly.
Yeah,
and somewhere, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, the graphics card in your computer got to be more powerful than the main CPU, the central processing unit on your computer. And so video games have driven the market for these video cards, and then somebody realized, my God, the processing power that these video cards have is so enormous to process video. If we applied this to regular computing, we could really accomplish something amazing. So NVIDIA just walks into this market and had tremendous foresight, and when I found out they had a $3 trillion market cap, it could have knocked me over. This is my graphics card company. That's just like something I plug into a slot. So yes, it's wonderful. Is there a follow-up question from
Oh, I was just going to point out that
are we going to panelist number 2 now?
I was just going to point out that the Bachelor number 2, I like that show better, is that what these Chinese guys did was make a software advance. I can't remember all the details. I wrote a long article about it yesterday. A software advance that allows them to run this AI on consumer-grade NVIDIA graphics cards instead of the high-end $2,000 a piece NVIDIA graphics card. And if NVIDIA's huge multi-jillion-dollar market for their high-end cards evaporates and they're left selling these consumer-level cards, there go their profit margins.
So here's a little more detail behind what Steve is just saying. When the U.S. Basically said, there are certain kinds of graphics cards that we don't want anybody shipping to China. So they specified that, okay, in the law. They specified what it was about those cards that you could not have so that China wouldn't have access to this kind of technology. So what NVIDIA did was basically beef up the power of the cards it was selling to China in a different way. So they didn't violate the U.S. ban, so to speak, but they still got some pretty darn good cards, and they were cheaper. And then there were some cards that the Deepseek people already had. But there's some more interesting aspects of it, I think, is the way they structure the company. First of all, apparently this guy who's in charge of it he's got this crazy idea that if you hire veterans of the industry, what you'll get is mostly people who know how things can't be done. And so he focuses on hiring people that are like just out of school or just, who are early in their careers. So he's got a lot of young bucks, and he's given them very little bit to work with in resources. And they've changed the fundamental way, and this is in broad brush. So if you know anything about this, I need you to plug your ears for a minute. But the fundamental way that most AI operations work is as if the AI was a librarian who had read everything. And then you ask it questions, and it answers those questions because it knows everything. The difference with Deepseek is Deepseek is a librarian who knows where all the books are and knows which books you need to get to in order to get answers. And so when you ask a question, it goes and grabs those books and generates the answer at that time. So it may be a little slower in operation, but it's much leaner in resource demand. And they also have chunked the information into categories, and so you're not sending that librarian hunting for every book in the library. You basically have one librarian for the fiction, one for the science fiction, one for the science, one for the history. And so very simplistic terms. But anyway, they've basically found a way to structure the software to run in a more efficient manner because they couldn't draw upon the kind of power and the number of processors that some of these other companies have had. So Steve, this is the question that...
Panelist number 2, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. In this case, it's panelist number 3 because I didn't like the question that they asked panelist number 2, so I'm going to ditch that one. But panelist number 3, this was the follow-up question that I asked because I wondered, how would it deal with this question? So I specifically asked for this question. Steve, given Deepseek's affordability and open source nature, there's a growing concern about its geopolitical implications. How do you assess the risks of a powerful AI technology being developed and potentially controlled by one of America's major competitive rivals? And what could this mean for global AI governance and security?
That's the second best question I've ever heard on the right answer.
Absolutely. Here's the problem. This is TikTok for grown-ups. So TikTok is a data hoovering service that, despite what ByteDance claims, come on, they're partly owned by the Communist Party. Everything in China is partly owned by the Communist Party. That collects your likes, your wants, your feedback, all of it goes to China. You think Facebook is bad? Well, it's CCP-owned Meta. Okay, it's a data hoovering service, along with being social malware designed to highlight the absolute worst, most aberrant behaviors and present them as normal to American teens. I hate TikTok. So what we have here is a grown-up version. It does serious work. It does helpful things. It does them on Chinese servers that hoovers up all of your data, your likes, your responses, your queries, all of it. In fact, if you look at their, what's the name of the company again?
NVIDIA?
No, the Chinese company.
Oh,
with the AI. No, not ByteDance.
The one that owns
Deepseek. Yeah, if you look at their privacy notice, they're tapping your keystrokes. They're tapping the things that you might delete and never hit send on. So it's another data hoovering service, and I think that the Communist Party having all of this data on the West in general and Americans in particular is a very bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't use this free service. That said, this is one of those cases where the leap they made is in software because their hardware was limited. And my counter argument, which is great, by the way, particularly if you're going to push for privacy concerns like Apple is trying to do, as many of the AI functions down to the phone as possible instead of on the servers, if you can make that software run on a smaller, more efficient device, that allows privacy-concerned companies to push more of those AI services onto the phone where your data is more likely to be private and secure. So that part's great. The other part is computer cycles, CPU cycles still count for something. So if you can take those software efficiencies and run them on these mega NVIDIA cards that American companies are using, that is still a competitive advantage because you can run more stuff, or you can run smarter stuff, or you can run more stuff that is smarter because you've still got the hardware advantage once you adapt the software leap that these Chinese engineers made. So I'm still giving us the advantage on that. But I want to finish with a warning here. Chinese engineers went very quickly from making cheap crap to producing fast copies to being world class. Yeah. And anybody who still says that just because something comes out of China means that it's junk is 10 or 15 years behind the times, and this is just one more example of that.
Well, I don't pretend to be an expert in any of this stuff, including in the financial markets, but it did somewhat shock me that the people who are buying and selling stocks are so short-sighted when it comes to something like this. Because my immediate thought when I heard that there was a cheaper way of doing something that's less resource intensive, that still gets you the same results as you've been getting when you pay a lot more and use a lot more resources, is that this will broaden the uses of the technology. It will put it into the hands of more people, of more industries. It'll essentially, democratize is the wrong word for it, but it will basically lower the barrier to entry for people who want to incorporate some sort of AI API, the application programming interface, into the software they use or into their websites, into their apps or whatever, and make it easier for that technology to be available even to small businesses, so to speak. And so to me, I'd be looking around for opportunities to invest in companies that make GPUs that maybe aren't as powerful as NVIDIA's, but are efficient and perhaps a little bit weaker, but much cheaper. And because companies are going to be snapping these up all over when they realize that if you write the software the correct way, you make fewer demands on the hardware. And if you're limited, if somebody said to you, look, all you get is the Ford 289 motor, and so, make a sports car out of it. I know you've just been making like a Falcon out of it. Make a sports car out of it, and so you start looking, you go, okay, what can we do? We can make it more aerodynamic. We can adjust the torque. We can make it lighter. We can, and so you start thinking of all the ways that you can extract more out of the Ford 289. And I think, in essence, that's what these boys and girls have done at this company that's created Deepseek. And so I think there's actually a great future for anybody that can cut the cost like this and make it easier for more people to use the technology. And those are my thoughts on this. This is what Deepseek said, I should say. Throughout history, resource deprivation has often been the mother of invention, pushing us to find smarter, more efficient solutions. Deepseek embodies this principle perfectly by being open source and cost-effective. It removes barriers to entry and empowers a far wider range of users to harness AI's potential. This accessibility doesn't just level the playing field, it accelerates global innovation, ensuring that the benefits of AI are no longer confined to the few, but are shared by the many. Deepseek isn't just a tool, it's a catalyst for a more inclusive and transformative future. And Deepseek didn't tell me to say this, but for Right Angle, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.